there, and welcome to New Visions for Peace. This is the show that brings you information and inspiration for living a peaceful life. I am Sutri Irving, and I am committed to work for peace in our world, for both personal and global peace for all citizens and life on Earth. On New Visions for Peace, I speak with the inspirational authors, teachers, and practitioners who share their ideas, insights, and wisdom that support both inner and global peace. And now join with me as we welcome our next guest on New Visions for Peace. I'm here today with Hilary Larson, Portland Regional Coordinator for the Gangaji Foundation, to talk about Gangaji and her upcoming open meeting in Portland on Saturday, May 3rd at the Unity Church, 4525 Southeast Stark. After studying radio and television at the BBC in London and receiving a BA degree in communications, Hilary started her professional radio career producing nationally syndicated radio shows in New York. She eventually found her way to Portland, and today Hilary hosts and produces a monthly radio program called A Conversation with Gangaji, which addresses subjects like addiction, chronic pain, intimacy, depression, anxiety, enlightenment, death, and many others. A Conversation with Gangaji can be found on the Gangaji.org website as well as on iTunes and Stitcher.com. Gangaji is a teacher and author who shares her direct experience of the essential message she received from Papaji and offers it to all who want to discover a true and lasting fulfillment. Through her life and words, she powerfully articulates how it is really possible to discover the truth of who we are and to be true to that discovery. Welcome to KBOO and New Visions for Peace, Hilary.
Thanks, good to be here.
I've been really looking forward to talking with you. The first time we talked was a show that launched New Visions for Peace, and I'm so grateful for that and for your encouragement along the way. I would never have thought I would be producing radio now, and now that I am, I really love it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're so great at it. Your interviews are just so natural. So I'm really glad to be here again.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you very much. Why don't we start off? I wanted to ask, what's the first thing you just say to someone who is not familiar with Gangaji about who she is and what she teaches?
I have no idea what to say, really. I mean, because it seems like it could be a long answer. And I think last time I was talking about when I was introduced to Gangaji, I had been seeking for a long time. I was a spiritual workaholic, I refer to myself as, and I was searching for a way to be at peace. And maybe I wouldn't have defined it that way, but I had all sorts of addiction problems. I had all sorts of physical problems, and whether it was seeing, different doctors, different nutritionists, different spiritual paths, different types of therapy, I was constantly I felt like I was constantly stomping out fires. You get one stomped out and then you turn around, there's another one.
Yeah.
And I think I had reached this level of exhaustion and perhaps some level of maturity where I was so tired of trying to fix myself all the time. And somebody said to me, "You're ready for Gangaji." This was several years ago. And then when I read Diamond in Your Pocket, I think I actually told this story last time, so I'll be brief, but it was just this moment of realizing that I'd been fixing myself. When I tell the story, it seems obvious, but to me, it didn't. It didn't seem obvious. It seemed like just my life. This is what I do.
Right.
And so when I read Diamond in Your Pocket, it was like the feeling of the exhaustion moved in, which was actually a good feeling because it was real, it was true, and that it was possible that I didn't have to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think that's not my definition of Gangaji, but it's what I think she gives is her own experience of having these profound experiences with her teacher Papaji, unexpected experiences back in 1990 of, this thing I call me, that I have all this energy put into, is actually not true. Uh-huh. And that's what she so eloquently transmits and articulates, I think.
And for our listeners, when you say something like this thing I call me is actually not true. What are you meaning by that?
It's so funny because even just saying me, it's like, how do you even define me? Because it's so me. And so me is in the way I define it. And it's almost so close. Like I said, it's hard to define, but it's all my thoughts about myself, who I am, how I feel, what my body's doing, are all these definitions of me. And I always thought that was true. Well, that's who I am.
Right.
And I've had some profound spiritual experiences where I was like, whoa, those are just thoughts.
Well, and a lot of those thoughts came from other people.
Yeah.
Like, that whole thing where we download, when we're children, young children, everything around us. And we learn, from our parents and school, but they're actually other people's definitions of who we should be, I think. And we learn who we should be, not necessarily who we are.
Yeah, and I think that with regard to Gangaji, I think if I could define what happened for me with Gangaji is I read Diamond in Your Pocket. I had this moment of like, oh my God, this is what I've been searching for my whole life. Through all of the doctors and all of the psychotherapists and all of the achievements, like all of the fixing and all of the accomplishing, this is what I was looking for. It was almost like this truer sense of myself already knew that, and it was like, hello, like, guess what? That's it. You're on it. And then I feel like over the last few years, it was so shockingly simple that over the last few years, for me, it's almost like my mind is taking its time to actually catch on. Because it's like it wants to complicate it again.
Yes, and I think the mind, I think people say it's the ego is always wanting to complicate things and take over. But the message that Gangaji has of just stop, that was the thing that clicked for me too when I first read. There's another book I read about her, but it really connected with me. Like, oh yeah, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that, I'm meditate this way or walk this way, and she just says stop, let it all go, and just discover what's inside you. That's not all these external messages.
Yeah, it's really. I was going to tell you, I was having a conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about a particular really profound experience I had just before I met Gangaji. And this was, I want to say it was over 10 years ago. And at the time, I had been clean and sober for years. I mean, I think probably at least 15 or 16 years now. I have 27 years. Wow. But I had suffered from really horrible anxiety, so I got sober and it was like, wow, now I get to feel it completely. And it was really quite debilitating at times, and I had a good amount of success, but I was always fighting this anxiety. And I don't want to get complicated or detailed, but I had this moment of such profound anxiety that I was actually down in Mexico. And it was this prolonged, intense anxiety. People talk about a panic attack lasting, physiologically, it can only last for, 4 minutes or something, they say. And I'm like, that's just not true.
Right. Yeah.
So that's just not true. So anyway, it was exhausting and it was prolonged, and I was trying to do an amino acid therapy for it to kind of calm my system down. And it actually was not working. And there was one moment where I felt like I was so exhausted, and this is going to sound weird, but I thought, I can't do this anymore, and I was just going to kind of wander into Tijuana and get some heroin, and I just figured that's the way I would go, that, I would just end up that way. And the thought of that was so completely foreign to my current life at the time. I was clean. I had been running a nonprofit. I was just not, I just wasn't a drug addict anymore, but it came up in me. And there was this, I think what happened was there was this moment where my ego just absolutely did not know where to go.
Yeah.
And there was this incredible surrender that happened in this moment. And in the surrender, I felt like I was going through this, like it looked like a hurricane.
Wow.
And in the hurricane was all this debris. And I clearly identified it as debris. And it was just like all the books, all the methods, all the practitioners were kind of swirling around in this debris. It was like, I could see the pointlessness of it as far as trying to cure my suffering went. And I started to head into this really dark abyss that felt endless, just completely endless. And I started to go into it. And then at the last moment, I got scared because it felt so endless. And I pulled back. And although that was a profound experience with me, I always thought, I wish I would have just let go. Because it was my mind's fear that kept me from letting go. But then a couple of years later, I met Gangaji, and I was like, that's what she's talking about right there.
That's a powerful visualization. I think that's a really helpful imagery, actually, in terms of what all the stuff that goes through our minds all the time is. It's debris. It's in the way.
Yeah, it's debris and it's in the way. And then there's this, and I'm not putting down spiritual practice at all, but Gangaji and I did a conversation on spiritual practice, which I think is one of my favorite conversations that we've had. It was for the month of March. And I have tried different forms of spiritual practice just to calm down my racing mind. And actually that's been helpful. But in the conversation I was having with her, I pulled a clip from one of her songs, and it's one of my favorite clips because she's talking about, well, we've got our spiritual practices, and then what are we practicing? And
in the rest of our life.
What are we actually then practicing after that?
It's kind of like I heard someone say, you pray all the time, and it's a matter of, when you're kind of concentrate on praying, you pray for something, you have an intention, you're specific, but your thoughts are always going on, and the prayer is always happening. And most of the time, it might not be that beneficial to you, all those thoughts. Like, it's still, what you're putting into the world that's going to reflect back to you.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Well, why don't we listen to that clip?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to.
I'm never quite sure what someone means when they say meditation practice. It usually means many different things to many people, mantra or breath, or the meditation practice that's perpetuated by most people in the world, which is, I am this body, this is me, this is who I am these thoughts, I am these emotions, I am not this body, I'm not that body. This is the meditation practice that is really going on. And then there may be breaks from that, where they say, Om Mani Padme Hum, or some secret mantra, or I am that, or you are that. But then back to the real meditation. This is me, I'm this body, these are my wants, this is what I need, this is what I gotta have, this is what I miss, this is what... You are that body, this is what you have that I want, or I have that you want. This is the meditation. This is what people are meditating on. And it's a meditation of suffering.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah. That's it, isn't it? It's most of the times, I think, our thoughts cause us suffering. And that's what we're learning, right? And that's what she teaches, that all those thoughts aren't really that helpful.
Yeah, they seem to be problematic. Problematic to say the least. And she was I think in that same conversation, I was asking her about stopping, and when her teacher Papaji said stop, she originally thought, because she came from a spiritual culture of meditation and searching herself, and she really is just like us. And then when he said stop, she immediately went, I'll focus on my breath. I'll slow my breath down, because that's what she had learned. And he was saying, no, I'm talking about deeper than that.
Right. Like even stopping the breath is a distraction.
Yeah.
It's like you're trying to stop your thoughts, and that's what you're using to do it. But even that's a distraction.
Yeah, it feels to me like it's the difference between managing and just being.
Right. Yes.
And we're so trained to manage. And
Yes.
certainly in life we have to do certain things, to get by in life. But just on this deeper level, this way of, to me, it's about, I was always trying to manage my suffering, really, ultimately, as just a flawed human being, just trying to manage that. And then I think that one of the biggest things that happened with me, with Gangaji as well, was that she's very honest as a human being about her own frailties. And she talks a lot about her own nervous system. And when I heard her talk about her nervous system as just that, that's just the body she came in,
right.
I was thinking, well, that's just the body I came in too. And why do I keep fighting it?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've been actually working with that a lot myself. The acceptance of, okay, I'm nervous right now, but it's okay. It doesn't mean I'm a flawed human being. It means there are things happening. It's okay. If I'm fighting it, if I'm resisting it, then I'm not being. I'm pushing it away, and it's going to come back, somehow. But if I can just be with what's happening and relax and accept myself and how I respond to things, then I'm more able to kind of look at it and see what's happening with me and why.
Yeah, I know Gangaji speaks so much about direct experience and what seems so clear to me, well, generally it seems clear to me, sometimes it doesn't, but that it's the thought of the experience that's painful. It's not the experience itself.
Right. Or I work with EFT a lot, and I think, this, fear is our greatest, that saying, the thing we have to fear is really true, because if, say there was a trauma and you don't want to re-experience it, there's a great fear. And there's a great resistance to looking at anything like that was painful, of having to relive it again. But I'm starting to think, well, so I already experienced that and I lived through it. I'm okay. And I'm like, what am I really afraid of? Why am I so afraid of looking at this? If I can just accept, this is who I am, this is what I experienced, those are the choices I made. They may not have been great, but I'm learning. This is Earth School, and if I can actually look at them and not be afraid, then I'll I think move so much more forward in my understanding of myself and who I am and why I'm here, and then I become much more able to accept that I might have gifts to give to the world.
I think it was maybe the third or fourth show we did was on the subject of anxiety. Yeah. And I don't know how I think I brought us into this whole area of the subject of anxiety, but there's also a great clip that I used in that show. If you don't mind, maybe we could play that at the very end, where she addresses what fear really is and the resistance to that. And it's a beautiful, beautiful clip.
Well, we could play that now if you want.
When you experience any negative emotion, really directly experience it with no story, just as in this instant, it's so instantaneous. It is not there. If you think you are experiencing it and there's still a lot there, then recognize there is some story still being told about me and fear. How big it is, how you'll never be able to get rid of it, how it'll always come back, how dangerous it is to experience it, whatever the story may be, endless stories. And just stop. When you say, okay, fear, come, and you really mean it and you are really open, fear can't come. Because in that moment you are not telling a story about fear. And fear exists only linked to a story. Yes, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It is some huge discovery. But it must be like, when the New World was discovered and Columbus or whoever came back and said, there's more out there than we know about. And everybody said, no, no, I'm not going there. The demons will get me, I'll fall off the earth. No, no, no. That's the same primitivism that's in human emotional culture. If you are willing to go off the edge of the earth, you will see that it is you yourself that holds the earth. And you cannot go off from yourself. You can only go deeper into yourself.
Yeah, that was great. I've really been working with that a lot myself. Fear. Like, once I realized it was the fear itself that was the problem, I became a lot less fearful.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because there's just a lot going on this planet right now, and maybe there's always a lot going on the planet, but yeah. I have my own personal issues that I deal with, and my mom just had surgery for cancer, and then she had chemotherapy, and I've gone through my own emotions about it and my own stories about it. But I think that this transmission of stopping that comes through so clearly with Gangaji, it's so part of my system that I will start telling myself a story of like, oh, what's going to happen with this or whatever. And it just seems so ridiculous and exhausting, and this old form of self-torture that it just is now seen for what it is. But it's almost like an automatic, oh, I'm torturing myself again.
Yeah.
And then what is here? Like, what's here really right now?
Right.
And it's not always like, oh, peace is here. Sometimes it's just like, oh, this is some intense fear. And just to leave it alone, there's peace in that.
Yeah. And it's understandable that there would be fear around a parent having cancer, having gone through that myself. And not knowing at the time so much about stopping. I suffered a lot through that period of time, and it's difficult, but there is such a great peace in just allowing yourself to be who you are. Like, it's okay to feel sadness. It's okay to feel grief. It's okay to feel fear. But I think what happens with that racing mind is it gets involved in the story that you were talking about, and it just creates more that's not actually happening.
Right. Yeah, because I think that sometimes even what's happening can seem terrible.
Yeah.
Because I think we've all gone through things that were like just really difficult things to go through.
Yeah.
But for me, when I just don't add to it, it's fine.
Right.
It's actually fine.
Yeah. I know. It's a gift. It's really a huge gift to come to that place where I don't know however this occurred for me. I think because I do EFT, it made me more conscious of my thoughts and even my feelings. Like I start to recognize that I'm feeling something before I get that there are thoughts creating those feelings. But when I feel that I'm getting tense or stressed or I'm having anxiety, then I'll notice what's going on in my brain, and I'll go, oh, you're making up this story about this thing that's not even actually happening right now. I'm projecting, what's going to happen when I interact with this person, or why did that person do that just now? Like, I'm making up a story that isn't actually happening. And when I do that, then I calm down. I become more peaceful, and I realize it's just my mind trying to, create something that's not actually occurring.
Yeah, I was I was in the kitchen the other day, and I was, cleaning the kitchen before I went to work, and I realized that the whole time I was cleaning the kitchen, making my lunch for work, I was in a fight with somebody. I had conjured a fight, an argument I was having with somebody. And then all of a sudden I stopped and I was just like, wow. Like that person, I'll have to call that person and let them know I was fighting with them because they're probably making their lunch right now too. And it's just like, that to me is the source of suffering in my life.
Yes.
And the capacity to stop, this capacity that Gangaji speaks of, is no small thing. It's the biggest thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, it's huge. And in all these different areas that you've talked about in your program, in the radio show, she speaks, to each thing, she speaks about it so well and makes it so clear. That it's really very helpful in becoming more conscious about what's going on in our thoughts and why that's causing us suffering.
Yeah, and I love the fact that with a conversation with Gangaji, the original intention of it was for Gangaji to really address issues that happen on, like, every day to all of us in certain ways.
Right.
So it's not like she is somebody who's sitting on a cushion up on a stage talking about esoteric things. She's not.
Right.
And in this way, it actually focuses one subject at a time, which I think is the beauty of it. It's just like, let's talk about financial insecurity, or let's talk about sex and sexuality, or let's talk about forgiveness, or whatever it happens to be. For these 30 minutes. And there's, she always surprises me because I often will write out some questions, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I'll think I know what she's going to say. I'm thinking I'm going to know the answer, and it's like I'm always wrong. Oh. But it kind of makes it fun.
Yeah. So then you learn something new because she surprises you.
Yeah, and honestly, what she is saying ultimately is always the same.
Yeah.
But how she gets us there is amazing to me.
Right. I wanted to ask you, when I watched the video that's on her website of you, and you talked about when you first read Diamond in Your Pocket, that you said something shifted in you, and it wasn't that your suffering ended, but it was your orientation to the suffering. And we may have been talking about that, but I wanted to get, what did you really mean by that? How did you see things differently? Like, what shifted? What was that orientation?
Let me see if I can articulate this.
Yeah.
My experience was that I always thought suffering was the problem. So I was constantly trying to get rid of suffering. And my orientation shifted. It was that my trying to get rid of the suffering was my suffering.
Oh, yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. I was actually just down in Southern Oregon, and I happened to be able to go to a Center for Spiritual Living service that Neil Donald Walsh is now the minister at. And I was reading one of his books, which is that essentially the essential cause of all suffering is that we feel a need. Like, that's kind of it. And that the need is to get rid of suffering. But I sort of understood this in a new way for the first time as, we've always, that is a cause of suffering, that we feel like we need this or we need that, or we don't have this or we don't have that. And if we can let go of that need and, again, just stop, just quit trying to push away what we're experiencing or make it something else, then that is a shift in orientation. It's a shift in how we relate to life. And I find it really helpful to have a perspective like that.
Yeah, it's a game changer. It really is. And it really seems to me, when I had that person say, "You're ready for Gangaji," I didn't know who Gangaji was. Yeah. I had been a Sufi, and before that, I'd had various spiritual paths that I was really dedicated to. But just in reading a few paragraphs in Diamond, my orientation, it felt like a building moved. I mean, it felt like it was moved down the block, but in reality, it might have just been a small enough, but it was a game changer for me. It was, oh my God, I was sitting there fixating on this thing called my life in a very particular way. I didn't realize that there was a different way of perceiving it. And then when I read those words that just resonated for me, and I wish I could recite them right now, but my memory's not good enough, honestly. Yeah. So I remember the experience distinctly, but I don't remember the words. It was like breathtaking. It was like a gasp. It was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, I had the same experience when I first read. I can't remember the name of the book. Somebody else wrote it.
Oh, was it Just Like You?
Yes.
Or I know what it was.
No.
Surprised by Grace.
Surprised by Grace.
Yeah,
that was book. I read it, and it was that thing. Something clicked. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm like working too hard. I'm like, and what's all this stuff that's making me feel like I need to work that hard?
God, that's it. You're on it. You're on it right there. That's it.
Yeah. And I still struggle with that because I get, like there are times when I feel like responsible for the world, and wanting everybody else to change. And that causes me suffering.
It's so tiring.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fun.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's tiring.
And actually it is a lot easier to, that be the change. It's a lot easier to just be. And I mean, we still have things we want to do and things we want to express, but trying to make it be something or trying to make other people be some way by what you're doing, that's always creating expectations that cause suffering.
Amen. Amen, sister.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you also, we talked about the recent conversation with Gangaji that you did, which was about living a conscious life. And I'm kind of really keen into this idea of conscious evolution and Barbara Marx Hubbard and all that right now. And I wondered, in that conversation, Gangaji talked about how we're perpetually distracted from our real experience by all the thoughts. And I wondered, how is it that we stop? What is the remedy for stopping that racing mind? Like, Gangaji just says stop, but, a lot of people are going to go, how? Like, how do you do that?
I would have to say that I feel such gratitude for the ways my life has changed as a result of meeting Gangaji, but I just don't even think in a million years I could communicate it like she communicates it, because she's also coming from a place that is so much deeper than my conscious mind can really wrap its wits around. So, it's almost like, apart from just mentally stopping, like when I was saying the other day when I was, making my lunch and I was having an imaginary fight with somebody, it was just that there's a momentum to the mental thought. And there was just this way where I just like interrupted it. And the other day there was Gangaji has a monthly webcast and it's live. And it's great. It's completely separate from a conversation with Gangaji. That's her radio show. This is a webcast, and it's beautiful because people can call in and ask her questions directly, which is great. And then they can she'll ask a repeating question, and so people can break into groups and then really kind of do a deeper inquiry on whatever thing she's talking about. And the other day, she gave this assignment. It was this kind of experiment of like, try not just stopping, like, oh, I'm telling myself a story, stop. Like, stop in the middle of the sentence. Don't even wait until the sentence is over. Just try that. See what it's like, just to, rather than go, if he would only blah blah blah, it's like stop.
Yeah.
Like stop and just see what happens, because it is like a momentum. It's a force. It's like going on autopilot. And it was a really profound exercise for a lot of people, including myself, of just like, we do have the capacity to stop the train. We do.
So it's some of that is being able to come to an awareness that what our thoughts are doing, that they're on a train, moving at full speed towards something. And it's the practice, like you're just saying, is stopping, but it's also just having an awareness of what are my thoughts doing? Like asking, I think she says that, ask yourself, what am I thinking right now? Why?
Yeah. And also, I just remembered that one of my other really unexpected experiences I had one time when I was in a small group satsang with Gangaji is she was talking about this idea of stopping the thought, stop, now, stop.
Right.
And I was sitting there and I was feeling more and more discouraged, and I had this old despair came up in me, and I was feeling like I'm the only one in the room that can't stop. And I had a good story to back that up, honestly, because I had gone through a series of very intense, they were like these seizures. And then I had this like very temporary stroke where I could not, this was like a few years before, where I went through a few minutes where I couldn't speak. I couldn't, and I was like, wow, this is, even in the midst of this experience, I was thinking, this is what it's like to have a stroke. Now, I don't know what it would have been diagnosed as, a TIA, or I don't know what it was officially, but my system, my brain had taken a beating. It had taken a beating from my drug use. It had taken a beating from constant anxiety. It had taken a beating from really serious drug withdrawals. It had taken a beating from my workaholism. I mean, it had just taken a beating. And so I was sitting there thinking, I can't stop. Right. Like, I'm going to be the one that's over there that she will say, oh, except for Hill, she can't stop. So it's tragic, but sometimes that happens with people. And so I went up there, and I'm not the kind of person that likes to cry in front of people, but I just felt like, you better tell the truth right now with your teacher. And so I got up there and I said, I told her about, all the brain stuff, and she looked at me so deeply, and she said the last thing I expected her to say. She looked at me and said, you let your mind race. Oh. And something in me just completely let go. Oh. Because I had actually been trying. I was trying so hard, just like make my thoughts stop. And I was just like trying so hard. And there was something about the permission of like, well, let it race then. It was a profound moment, and it wasn't like a profound moment for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or the next day. When you go to a retreat, sometimes when I used to go to retreats, I would just feel so like, wasn't that great for like a week? And then it would be like, well, okay, now my life is back again. And so that actually lasted. It was like a true shift of awareness. 'Cause like I was saying earlier, I had my attention in a very fixed way about my life. And then she said that, and it completely disrupted what I thought was true. And it set that story free. It was like that story fell down on the ground and disintegrated right before my eyes.
Wow. So, I think that's acceptance of who we are is really an important thing in our spiritual awareness and awakening. And that's really cool. I was going to say, if a diagnosis of something like that would be, there's nothing wrong with you. It's not showing up on the scanner.
Well, I was in a situation where I was actually doing that amino acid therapy, and it was a very extreme physical situation. It was a dangerous situation I was in, actually. So if I was in a hospital, they would have done something like right away. And I do have the after effects of that. I do have some trouble with mobility, but it was It's funny how, sometimes the things in life that seemed like a horror show at the time are the ones that serve us in such amazing ways later on in life. And I actually consider those to be one of them. I don't feel like the victim of it. I feel like the recipient of something bigger as a result of it.
Yeah. It's one of those stories that we get involved in, that this is what's going on with me. And, you're sitting over in the corner in the Gangaji thing saying, there's no hope for me. But in her allowing you to accept who you are and that your mind races, you were able to just let that go.
Yeah, and once again, it was like I didn't even know that was a story I was telling myself. It seemed like it was true.
Right.
And then when that story got interrupted by her, it was like, oh my God, it's such a deep trance. These thoughts we have about ourselves, they're trances.
They are, that we don't know we're participating in. Like a lot of people would like to go into deep trance, but in fact, we are most of the time, because it's not really who we are, what we're experiencing. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit, but since Gangaji is coming to town on May 3rd, and then she's coming again back in the fall for a retreat, I wanted to ask you, what would someone expect, like, that hasn't been to a Gangaji open meeting, and then after that, a retreat, what would someone experience when they go to these events?
Well, she hasn't been to Portland for a couple of years, so we're all pretty excited that she's coming back.
Yeah.
And what happens at a public meeting is the Gangaji starts with a meditation, and then she will just kind of organically start talking about something that has to do with satsang, when I imagine everything has to do with satsang, really. But and then she'll ask people to come up and sit on stage with her, and it's and go through. They'll have their own inquiry, or they'll have their own report, or like even the example I gave of, like, when I got up and said, you know what, I have this despair around this thing, and she really helps you zero in on, like, mentally, what is this weave of a story you've got going, and then what's underneath that story? What's truer than that story? Who are you under that story? And what I love about the public meetings, or actually they're all like that format, is that people get up and they share their experience or their fear, or where they're stuck, or where they don't get what she's saying, and it's like they get to represent all of us. So in the course of the evening, 5 people get up and sit with her, for example. I always get so much out of it. Yeah. So the public meetings are more kind of really, really, really basic stuff about human life. And the same is true of a weekend retreat with her, which happens, then she'll come back the last weekend of September at the Forestry Center. But that's a different opportunity of going just like really deep, really, really deep, and experiencing several satsang meetings with her. And those are just really incredible, like what's possible during one of those.
It is interesting, because I've been to a few of her meetings here and in Ashland, and people, when they get up and sit with her, you can actually, sometimes the sort of the fear of what's happening in their world is palpable. Like they're really, like, the story is really involved, and it feels so real. And somehow she cuts through it. Like, she can see what it is and can point it out to them in a way that helps them to understand.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that I really, really have come to appreciate more and more and more is Gangaji is not interested in herself as a personality. She's not wanting to be the one that helps somebody see. I mean, it's not about her as a person. It's truly about inquiry. It's truly about the question of, who are you? And I love that, because, there are lots of people out there, with good intentions and wanting to do good things. And And some people teach from their ego. I mean, if I was a teacher, I would teach from my ego just because I have not fully seen the illusion of it yet. Right. But I just I so much appreciate that about her. It's like that it's not about her. It's about the truth.
Right. Well, let's talk a little more about the retreat at the Forestry Center. It's the last weekend in September, and they're like 2 days all day long.
Yeah. So what happens is people gather both Saturday and Sunday. There's a satsang at 11 o'clock, and then there's a break, and then Gangaji comes back at 4 o'clock, and so that happens both days. And that's, you think, oh, that's just 2 meetings a day that's 2 meetings a day, equaling 4 meetings. The first time I went to a retreat like that, I was thinking, that doesn't seem like a lot, because that's just 4 meetings, and it is plenty.
Really?
Like
you get enough in each meeting.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
You need time to process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a smaller event. Like, there's not as many people, so there's a little more intimacy in that experience. And all of that, the information about that retreat, and you also have to, I think there's a requirement, she would like you to be able to go to an open meeting before you go to a retreat. Have I seen that on the website?
That's true of the small group retreats. The small group retreats. And those retreats happen several times a year, usually in Ashland.
But that's not true of this one.
That's not true, and I hope that I didn't just lie. But I don't believe that's true now.
I just know I've seen that on the website.
Okay, then I think I'm lying.
Well, no, I don't know if I've seen it about other retreats.
Okay. I know it's true of small group retreats, but the weekend retreats, the weekend intensives like that, it's just, if your heart is drawn to that, then you go to the website. Brand new website, it's a beautiful website.
Yeah,
and sign up for that.
Which is www.gangaji, GANGAJI.org.
Yeah.
And you'll find about the retreats, about the radio program, about the monthly webcast.
Yeah, Gangaji's monthly webcast. It's called With Gangaji. And also, I wanted to say something about this new website really quickly. Is there's a section in the website called the Oasis, and it was created for just pure satsang. And by the way, the word satsang means being in relation to the truth.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, what's
that mean?
Using this word over and over again. People don't know what it means. It took me a while to understand what it means. It's just really to be in relation to the truth. It's like, who am I in relation to all these stories I tell myself? So this oasis is beautiful. I heard about it for months because, I do a lot of stuff with the Gangaji Foundation, and we've all been excited about the website. And I was told what it was, but I saw it for the first time when they launched the brand new website last month. And it is really something. And it's hours and hours and hours of satsangs with Gangaji. And there's satsangs with Papaji, her teacher, that you can see. I think it's like $15 a month or something. You have full access to it. And it's not stuff you're going to find on YouTube, because you can pretty much find a lot of Gangaji stuff on YouTube. It's like this treasure trove of things. It's like Barbara Denenpont, who's the executive director of the Gangaji Foundation, calls it Gangaji Netflix. So it's incredible. It's incredible. I just wanted to toss that in there.
So you could do an intensive for a long time on your own.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which I like listening. I mean, it's, if you're gardening or even doing dishes or something, I know people said you should just do what you're doing, but I like to listen while I'm doing things that don't necessarily take my attention. Even though that's not popular in some meditative processes. Well, this is in addition to the events that are coming up with Gangaji, but you told me in an email that Eli is coming to town next week.
Yeah, he'll be here on Tuesday.
which that's kind of exciting. I've actually not seen him in person, so I'm looking forward to that. And that's going to be at New Renaissance.
Yeah, it starts at 7 o'clock. It's just $15 at the door. Eli Jackson Bear is Gangaji's husband, and he's the one that actually went out on his search to find his final teacher back in 1990. And he left Gangaji, who was not Gangaji at that time. Her name was Tony.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'm finding my final teacher," because he had like a vast experience in the world of spiritual teachings. And the story of how he found Papaji was just like, it's spectacular how he found Papaji. And he called Gangaji and said, "You have to come here and see this man." And then she had profound awakenings as a result of meeting Papaji, and effortless. And people started to come to her just because it was like this sense of, she didn't come back and say, "Oh, this is what I learned." It was just this thing. It was a phenomena that kind of happened. But Eli has done satsang for years, and they've done it together. And so he'll be at New Renaissance 7 to 8:30 this Tuesday. That's April 8th. So that'll be fun.
Is there any final words you'd like to give to the audience about Gangaji and how great it is to see her in person?
Yeah, it's great to see her in person. Yeah, I mean, I think when you find your teacher, and you just never know when that's going to happen. I was not expecting to meet her. That there's a resonance that happens, and because of that resonance, there are deeper and deeper possibilities always. So I had my first experience with her, and honestly, I didn't even know she was a female. I thought, Gangaji could be a man.
Right.
I had a series and continue to have awakenings as a result of spending time with her. But the first time I did see her in person at a public meeting, she was walking out the door, and I was late, and I was sitting in the back of the room, and I didn't want to disrupt the meeting. And so she walked by me on her way out the door when she was done, and it was completely unplanned. And she looked at me in this moment, and it was like I had never I'd said the word namaste before, but I'd never experienced it. I'd never directly experienced like, "Oh, I see you. I see you, and you see me, and it's the same thing." And it was like, I didn't really even know what to say after that. I couldn't describe it, but you just never know what happens when you show up someplace.
I actually had a friend who went to the last time she was here, the open meeting, because she saw it on Facebook. I posted it or something, and she had that same experience. She was in the hallway when Gangaji was walking out, and Gangaji looked at her, and she called me and said, "That was amazing. That, oh my God, that we had a moment, And she was clearly affected by that, moment of recognition.
Yeah, recognition, complete recognition. And I know that it's not Gangaji's favorite thing when people put too much emphasis on her. But at the same time, I have to say, she comes with the package, it's like she's the form. She's this human being that this awakening has occurred in, so it's very easy to associate it with her. And what's clear to her is that it's not about her. But it's certainly, when one has an experience with another human being where they get who they are, who's ever going to forget that? I
was just going to say, as you were talking, it made me think that, that's kind of maybe all what we're all looking for, is to have that kind of recognition and interaction. And some of this, the work of a spiritual practice is learning how to have the presence to do that with people, like, releasing the thoughts and the stories that are, complicating our minds and filling up our experience, to let that go, so that you can actually have a recognition and listen and see someone in a way that you don't if you're all wrapped up in all those stories. And I think it's really important. Like, that's the kind of conscious evolution that I get excited about.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And one last thing, I don't know if you can do this or somebody should just go to the open meeting, or like, how would you define awakening? Like you said, you've had a few awakenings. What would you call an awakening?
That's a good question. For me, awakenings have occurred when my mind stopped. Either, usually it's been unexpected, and there's a clarity in the fact that all of the chatter that goes on in my head is really just chatter.
Yeah.
It's just chatter. I mean, it's what we were talking about earlier, and that there is something so much bigger than the chatter that I overlook sometimes on a daily basis. And to be awake enough to just see the chatter as chatter is just the jumping off place. That's just the jumping off place.
Yeah. And it's not like you have an awakening and that's it. It's just like a path of learning how to be.
I think some people, just to be honest with you, I think some people have what I would refer to as a sustained awakening. And I think that that's what Gangaji experienced, is a sustained awakening. It wasn't like, oh my God, I had this incredible experience with Papaji, and then I kind of went back to my life, and then I recount the story of Papaji. I think she lives in that awakening, and I think that's how she serves us all, is communicating from that awakening. And I think that's a pretty special place.
Yeah, it's great. Again, the upcoming meeting is on Saturday, May 3rd at 7:30 at the Unity Church of Portland, 4525 Southeast Stark. And you can, again, go to the website www.gangaji.org to find all that information as well. And I just want to thank you so much for coming back and having this conversation with me. It's been great.
Oh, thanks for having me. I just think it's fun to sit here and yak.
Yeah.
It's like, the sophisticated yakking, but it's good yakking.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. You have been listening to New Visions for Peace, produced through the studios of KBOO Radio, 90.7 FM here in Portland, Oregon, and KBOO.FM on the web. As always, I am very grateful to our guests for sharing their insights, visions, wisdom, and practices for creating peace in our world. And I also want to thank Laura Love for her lively rendition of Put a Little Love in Your Heart. You can learn more about what I do to create and support peace at www.newdirectionsforpeace.com. I look forward to bringing you more inspiration on the next New Visions for Peace.